Healing by self-hypnosis. Most often I had them imagine that they were on a sailing ship anchored in the lagoon of a South Pacific island in the 19th century. During the less than 5-minute exercise, I had them see, hear, feel, smell, and taste in great detail. Then I had them open their eyes and reorient themselves to the classroom again. Next, I asked them to recall a vacation, a trip, or a party that they had experienced sometime in the previous year. Then I had them recall the lagoon experience, then the real experience, then the lagoon, then the reality. Finally, I asked if anyone could tell me the difference between the two experiences as memories, regardless of content. Except in cases where the real experience or the lagoon experience was exceptionally emotional, no one could. Then I had them compare the lagoon memory to a memory of lunch 2 weeks ago, Tuesday. In this case, unless that particular lunch was especially traumatic or joyful, the lagoon memory seemed more real. It turns out that the body doesn't determine reality by the same rules that the mind uses. As far as the body is concerned, reality is determined by sensory stimulation, and it isn't particular about where that stimulation comes from. A highly emotional reaction to an ordinary event will have a greater influence on the body's ongoing behavior than a lukewarm reaction to an extraordinary event. And a really good fantasy can change the body in ways that mundane experience may not be able to. Personally, I can keep my body in much better shape with exciting fantasy exercises than I can with boring physical ones, as long as my fantasies have a high degree of sensory stimulation in them. Really effective healthy fantasy involves making up experiences that are either highly unlikely or, in terms of ordinary reality, utterly impossible, but which contain a large degree of intense sensory stimulation related to healing. Here are some of my favorites. Magnificent massage. When I'm home, I spend a lot of time at my computer, and if I get too involved for too long a time, my neck and shoulder muscles get stiff and sore. One of the quickest ways to take care of this is to imagine, with great attention to detail, that I'm getting a neck and shoulder massage from a favorite actress or model. This can ease all the tension in less than a minute. Of course, I always have the option of having them do a more extended massage if I choose. Although I have great respect for the art of real therapeutic massage, my fantasy masseuses do a better job than most of the ones I've been to, because I can imagine exactly what I want and how I want it. Techno-fantasy. One time I was in bed with a bad chest cold, so I conjured up a team of scientists from the future, who set up a healing apparatus over my bed and zapped my chest with an energy ray, complete with spacey sound effects. I also imagined that I could feel the ray penetrating my chest and dispersing the congestion. Not only was it great fun, but I was able to breathe easily and go back to work within half an hour. On another occasion, my oldest son challenged me to arm wrestling at a time when he was working out and I was death-ridden. There was no question that he would be able to beat me under ordinary circumstances, so I created extraordinary circumstances. As he told me later, he was using a martial arts technique to send a powerful flow of water through his arm to increase his strength. I suspected as much, so I imagined a band around my wrist that was attached to a rod in the direction I wanted to go. Both band and rod made of titanium steel and connected to a miniature nuclear engine at the end of the table. Well, flowing water didn't stand a chance against that. When I turned on the engine and put his arm down on the table without any apparent effort, he reacted with great shock and surprise. In fact, that event didn't have anything to do with healing, but the same concept can be used to increase strength and endurance, speed up healing processes, or make repairs to the body. All you need to do is to be able to imagine a technology that, if it existed, could do what you want. I found that this works best when you use it to do something positive instead of trying to use it against something, or to try and get rid of something. For instance, my healing ray filling my chest with light wasn't directed at destroying the illness. The nuclear engine wasn't working against my son's arm. It was simply pulling my arm and took my son's arm with it. If you use a techno-fantasy device to repair your body, keep it focused on the result you want and not on the illness or disease or condition that you don't want. As with every technique, sometimes you get quick results and sometimes you have to keep doing it for a while. Fantastical magic. Some people are not into technical stuff and would rather play with magical imagination. This works just as well as long as you put enough sensory data into it. A long time ago, I led a series of role-playing games for a group of teenage boys in my neighborhood. One of the boys usually played the role of a druid with magical powers. He came down with chickenpox and had to leave the game for a while, but he returned sooner than anyone had expected. As he told us later, he was lying on his bed at night feeling miserable when he suddenly thought, "Hey, I'm a druid. I can make this stuff go away by magic." He knew he was just playing, but he made up a spell and ordered his spots to fly off his body and stick to the ceiling, seeing that happen in his mind's eye at the same time. Then he smiled to himself and went to sleep. The next morning, the chickenpox was gone. There were, however, no spots on the ceiling. The key factor was that, Even though he was doing it for fun, he didn't actually deny or doubt what he was doing. Just a few moments ago, my body was feeling out of sorts because of stress and lack of sleep. So to go along with reading this section, I got a glass of water and pretended that I was casting a magical spell on it to turn it into a healing potion. I said the magical words, "Abracadabra, sis-boom bee, turn into a healing potion for me." And I imagined the water becoming all bubbly and golden. Then I drank some of it and imagined I could feel the potion going through my body and making it feel better. Right now, I feel great. Healing by symbolic logic. One of the most amazing instant healing techniques of all has to do with the use of inner symbols. It's possible to turn this into a very complex procedure, but I'm going to give you the simple version that usually works just as well. First, I'll explain the concept and the process, then I'll give some examples. I said earlier that the body judges reality by the intensity of sensory experience, and not by whether the experience happens outside your body or inside your mind. In addition, the body can respond to symbols of a condition as strongly as it can to the condition itself. That's why dreams can have such a powerful influence on health, and also why an encounter with something associated with an event can reproduce the effects of the event. Some people get allergic reactions when looking at a picture of a cat. Some people get depressed when they hear a bit of music that was playing when something bad happened. Some people get drunk from non-alcoholic drinks that they think contain alcohol. Some people smile when they smell a particular fragrance. In all of these cases, something unrelated became a symbol for an experience, and the body reacted to the symbol when the experience itself wasn't happening. The responses I'm describing are suggestive of simple behavioral conditioning, as when Pavlov's dog heard a bell every time he was fed, and then learned to salivate when there was really only a bell and no food. But there's a very clever way to turn the use of symbols into a healing technique. If the body reacts to a particular experience, and you change the experience, then the body changes its reaction. And if the body reacts to a symbol as if it were the real experience, and you change the symbol, then the body also changes its reaction to the experience, as if it too had changed. Because the body doesn't care if the symbol is external or internal, providing it's vivid enough, you can imagine a symbol of the experience or condition and change the symbol to get a healing effect. When my mother was alive, there was a time when she was having chest pains. I asked her to tell me what it felt like. That is, what did she think could cause a pain like that? She immediately said that it felt like a big box of books was sitting on her chest. So I told her to imagine a couple of big husky Hawaiians coming over to lift it off her chest, and I had her repeat that as a detailed experience 3 times. By the end of the 3rd run-through, a few minutes later, the pain was all gone. Days later, she told me that her doctor had found tumors in her chest before I had seen her, but when she was checked after the box of books technique, the tumors were no longer there. Many times, people I've been with have had headaches, and they've told me that it felt like their head was in a vice. So I told them to imagine that there really was a vice there, and to imagine that they could reach up and loosen it. In almost every case, after repeating it 3 times to set the experience in memory, the headache was relieved. Similarly, people have told me that they had a stabbing back pain, as though there was a knife in them. I had them repeatedly imagine they could reach back and take the knife out, and the pain went away. During a class, a woman complained of a pain in her knee that had been there for months, making it hard for her to walk. I asked her to imagine that an object was in her knee causing the pain, and to tell me what shape it was. She said it was like a wedge. I asked her to tell me how much it weighed, and she said 5 pounds. I asked her what color it was, and she said it was red. So I told her to imagine that she was reaching into her knee with her hand, taking out the 5-pound red wedge, and throwing it away. I had her do that 3 times in detail, and then asked her to get up and walk and tell me how she felt. She got up without pain and walked without pain for the first time in 3 months. In all of these cases, the pain or discomfort has not been suppressed. To suppress pain, you have to divert attention away from the pain through distracting activity or a mental process, use a drug that blocks awareness of the pain, or tense muscles so that you can't feel the pain. None of these changes the condition. On the other hand, symbolic imagination actually induces relaxation that allows the body to get on with healing. Healing by clouds of color. People who get involved with metaphysics soon learn of an imagination technique that is generally called something like the white light of protection. It consists of imagining that you are surrounded by a white light, or in some variations a white cloud, a sort of energy shield, or a kind of mirror. Metaphysically, it is supposed to set up a high vibration around you that repels negativity. Practically, it lowers anxiety and stress to the degree that it makes you feel safer. However, its range of use is limited, because all you can use it for is protection. When I was much younger, I learned a Hawaiian technique that I call clouds of color. Instead of protecting, however, these imaginary clouds that you put around yourself or around parts of your body are used for physical, emotional, and mental healing. There are 2 aspects to the technique, color and intent, and each draws upon memory associations to produce its effects. There are a lot of color systems in the world, and I'm not going to invent another one. If you have already learned a particular system of associating colors with specific qualities, and you like the system, you can apply it to this technique. But if not, or if you want to try something different, you can work with fundamentals that are not based on philosophy or culture. Basically, colors can be divided into warm or cool, bright or dim, and hard or soft. Red, orange, and yellow tend to be more stimulating physically, emotionally, and mentally. Green, blue, and violet tend to be more soothing in the same areas. Brighter colors are more stimulating. Dimmer colors are more soothing. Hard colors, that is, colors that are more pure, are also more stimulating, while soft colors, those that are mixed with a small amount of white, gray, or black, and which may be called muted, are more soothing. Mixing the preceding characteristics allows for a huge number of variations, but the main effects to remember and use are stimulating or soothing. Physical colors can produce these effects, and so can imagined ones. Intent, in this case, simply concerns imagining the specific healing effects that you want the imagined colors to have. Imagining yourself surrounded by a cloud of bright orange or yellow, with the intent that it should increase your strength and endurance, will help to produce that effect by stimulating physical processes in your body and evoking appropriate memories that will alter your behavior. Imagining a soft green or blue cloud in or around a part of your body which is swollen or infected, with the intent that it heal the condition, will help to reduce tension and mobilize the body's healing resources. Doing the same thing with the intent to heal any related emotional conflicts will help to resolve them without you having to understand them or even know what they are. You'll find that some cloud colors will help you reduce anger, and some will help to reduce fear. Some will help you to increase tolerance, and some can help to resolve confusion and doubt, all depending on your associations with the colors and the intentions you have. In short, you can use the colors in any way that you want, for any purpose that you want. Take advantage of your imagination and use it to get excellent healing results. As with all healing techniques, sometimes the effect will be immediate, and sometimes you'll have to keep it up, steadily or intermittently, until you get results. Touch is our third method of instant healing. It is good for your health to be touched. Being touched by another person produces more physiological, emotional, and mental changes in your body than input from any other sense. And unless you have mental or emotional resistance to that touch, those changes are always beneficial. Even when the touching seems superficial, the body-mind response can be significant. At a university in Florida, volunteers were brought in to gently stroke the skin of premature babies for 10 minutes a day, while a control group of babies was left untouched. The results showed that the stroked babies gained weight faster and were ready to be discharged days earlier than the babies that were not touched. An experiment carried out by UCLA researchers at the Santa Monica Library in Southern California consisted of having the person checking out the books contrive to make hand contact, however slight, with 100 people who were borrowing books, and then being careful to avoid contact with the next 100. Outside the library, students interviewed each person exiting to find out what they thought of the library's services. The overall satisfaction of the 100 who had been touched was dramatically higher than those who had not been touched. This was the case even though the touch was unobtrusive and had nothing to do with the services. That small human contact was enough to alter perception on a much larger scale. Strong responsiveness to touch is normal in human beings, but for a variety of reasons, some people grow up with a fear or dislike of it. Part of a person's response to touch draws from his cultural background. Northern Europeans and Northern Asians tend to severely limit touching in family groups and avoid it wherever possible among non-family members. When it can't be avoided, as on crowded trains, it is studiously ignored. Some people, such as the British and French, engage in ritual touching, such as the handshake or the shoulder grab with a quick peck or near peck on the cheeks. Other groups, such as the Japanese, avoid even that by substituting it with ritual bowing. However, even though the Japanese don't go in for public touching, they do have a strong cultural tradition of massage, which puts them way ahead of the British in the touching department. Compared to the British, Americans are touchy-feely fiends, with their back-slapping, arm-grabbing, rough-hugging manners. But compared to the Italians, Americans are very stiff and reserved. Excluding those with severe mental disorders, all people will respond well to touching, even public touching, in the right circumstances. Quite intimate touching seems to be okay among athletes, for example, or touching a stranger while dancing is normal, and group sing-alongs often result in more physical contact than is usual in a crowd. I remember a workshop I led in Japan where the response really surprised me. Ordinarily, I end my workshops with people holding hands in a circle, and to finish, I have everyone hug the person on either side of them. I had ended this workshop with a circle, but I was going to end without the hugs out of deference to Japanese custom. However, my wife signaled me to go ahead with it, so I explained to the group that this was a Hawaiian custom, and they had to do it as part of the workshop. They did it, with a fervor and excitement that I couldn't believe. It was as if my giving permission to touch let loose a powerful force of suppressed inclination. They hugged on either side, they hugged across the room, and they hugged me over and over again. Apart from cultural resistance to touching and being touched, there is the resistance that comes from bad experiences. Unfortunately, it seems as though nearly every culture has people so selfish and cruel that they take advantage of positions of authority and responsibility to exploit the natural impulses of others to love and be loved. They do it for their own personal pleasure and without regard to the consequences for the other person's life.